The rain clung to the glass doors of St. Mark's Hospital as a lone woman sat outside, holding a trembling umbrella against the cold Chicago night. Her coat was soaked, her hair plastered to her cheeks, yet she didn't move, not even when the wind cut through the empty street. She was waiting, always waiting. Inside, Dr. Lucas Carter paused by the 8th floor window, watching her silhouette through the fogged glass. Night after night she appeared, never entering, never leaving early. Something about her stillness, about the fear hidden in her eyes, pulled him toward a truth he wasn't prepared to learn. And when he finally asked who she was waiting for, the answer unraveled a life-changing story of pain, courage, and a mother's silent devotion. Tonight the truth would surface, and what happened next would change all of their lives forever. Before we begin this emotional story, tell us in the comments from which city you are watching, and don't forget to leave your like to keep following us. The rain had started before the clock even touched 7, a cold curtain swallowing the empty streets around St. Mark's Hospital in the heart of Chicago. The amber streetlights flickered across the wet asphalt, reflecting broken shapes of passing cars that never noticed the woman sitting on the metal bench. She kept her back straight, hands clasped in her lap, a clear umbrella held carefully above her, as if any sudden movement might make the world collapse a little more beneath her feet. The sleeves of her dark coat were soaked, yet she seemed unable to feel the cold cutting through the night. The nurses had seen her there so many times that, even without knowing her name, they had learned not to ask. The woman arrived every night and stayed in that same spot, unmoving, as if she were waiting for an invisible permission to finally leave, or to walk inside. Someone waved at her from the sliding doors of the hospital, but she only tilted her head in acknowledgement, offering no smile. The wind pushed a few raindrops across her face. She wiped them away with the back of her hand, slow, distracted. Inside, on the 8th floor, Dr. Lucas Carter walked toward the long corridor with the panoramic window. His shift was almost over, yet his mind stayed tangled in reports, in lab results that didn't add up, in the long silences of families who had just heard things too heavy to hold. He pressed a hand to the cold glass, watching the city dissolve under the rain. On the sidewalk outside, the solitary figure caught his attention again. There she was, every night, without fail. Lucas narrowed his eyes, unable to shake the unsettling feeling that he was missing something, and that somehow it was connected to her. He had noticed her for the first time 2 weeks earlier, when he left the hospital long after midnight and saw her sitting on the same bench. He assumed she was waiting for a ride, but the next night proved otherwise. By the 3rd, he realized she kept staring at the hospital's main entrance, like someone gathering courage to cross a threshold she wasn't sure she deserved. The rain thickened. The woman adjusted her umbrella, drew a long breath, and leaned forward slightly as if preparing to stand. Yet she hesitated. Lucas tapped the glass again, uneasy. "Who is she waiting for?" he murmured, unaware that the answer would unravel far more than the rhythm of this rainy night. When Lucas finally stepped out through the staff exit, the rain had softened to a dense mist, a thin veil drifting between the hospital lights and the street. His footsteps splashed in shallow puddles as he walked toward the parking lot, but his eyes kept drifting to the bench across the road. The woman was still there, her posture unchanged, her gaze anchored to the sliding doors, as if time moved differently around her. He hesitated near his car, keys in hand. Exhaustion tugged at him. 12 hours of emergencies, complicated cases, families clinging to hope. But something in the stillness of that woman made it impossible to simply leave. He let the keys hang loosely between his fingers, the metallic clink echoing faintly in the damp air. She lifted her head slightly when a passing bus rumbled by, splashing water toward the sidewalk. The glow from the streetlight revealed the fine lines around her eyes, the weariness etched into her expression, the kind born from waiting too long for something that refused to come. Lucas felt a quiet pull in his chest, a sense of recognition he couldn't quite place. He crossed the street slowly, not wanting to startle her. When he reached the edge of the bench, he paused. "Evening," he said softly, his voice careful, trying not to sound like a doctor evaluating a patient. The woman blinked, surprised. Up close, her eyes were a gentle gray, alert, tired, but not afraid. "You're one of the doctors," she said, barely more than a whisper. "You're usually on the 8th floor." Lucas nodded, caught off guard that she had noticed him too. "I've seen you here," he admitted. "Every night." A faint smile touched her lips, but it wasn't really a smile, more an acknowledgement of an obvious truth she didn't want to explain. "I'm waiting for someone," she murmured. He waited for her to say more, but the pause stretched. The rain tapped lightly against her umbrella, a rhythmic whisper between them. "Is the person inside the hospital?" he asked gently. Her fingers tightened around the umbrella's handle. For the briefest moment, her breath hitched, so subtly that someone less attentive might have missed it. "Yes," she finally said, "but I can't see them tonight." Lucas felt a small knot form in his stomach. The way she said it, soft, protective, almost trembling, carried a weight he couldn't decipher. "Is there anything I can help with?" he asked, though he wasn't sure why he felt compelled to. She turned her face toward the glowing hospital windows, her expression unreadable. "Not yet," she whispered. "But you will." The words lingered between them, quiet but unsettling, as if she knew something he didn't, something that would soon force both of their lives to shift. The next evening brought a sharper cold, the kind that slipped through seams and lingered on the skin. Lucas arrived earlier than usual, walking out of the hospital after completing a double check on a complex case. His eyes drifted automatically toward the bench across the street, and there she was again. Same coat, same umbrella, same quiet posture carved into the night. But something was different. Her hands trembled slightly as she buttoned her coat, the gesture slow, as if every movement required deliberate effort. Lucas crossed the street before he could talk himself out of it. The city hummed faintly around them, distant horns, the rumble of the subway under the asphalt, the soft hiss of the street lamp flickering overhead. "You're early tonight," he said, stopping a respectful distance away. She didn't look surprised to see him. Instead, she shifted on the bench, making just enough space for conversation. "I needed to be here," she murmured. "Some nights feel heavier than others." Lucas studied her face. There was an ache in her eyes, a silent pleading that didn't match the quiet strength in her posture. "Who is inside?" he asked, more gently this time, careful with the words. She kept her gaze fixed on the hospital entrance. "My son," she finally said. "He's 16. Her voice cracked only on the number, as though the age itself carried a weight she wasn't prepared to hold. Lucas felt something tighten in his chest. Teenagers in hospitals were almost always tied to tragedy, accidents, sudden illnesses, diagnoses that arrived out of nowhere. "Is he in critical care?" Lucas asked, though he braced himself for the answer. She hesitated before nodding. "He's been there a while," she said softly. "Too long." The umbrella shifted slightly in her grip. "I don't go inside unless they tell me something changed," he frowned. "Why not? Parents can visit. You should be with him." She exhaled, a long, thin breath. "It's complicated." He waited, but she didn't continue. Her eyes remained locked on the glowing entrance, as if she expected someone to walk out at any moment and call her name. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small notebook, bent, worn, the corners softened by time. She held it with both hands, almost tenderly. "He writes in here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Even when he sleeps, even when he's too tired." She brushed her thumb along the cover. "He asked me not to read it." Lucas felt the weight of that. A son's secret, a mother's restraint, a distance forged by something neither of them had spoken aloud yet. Before he could respond, the hospital intercom crackled from inside the entrance. She flinched, not out of fear, but anticipation. Lucas leaned forward slightly. "What are you waiting to hear?" he asked. She closed the notebook, holding it tight against her chest. "The moment," she said, "when they finally tell me I can't wait out here anymore." And the way she said it, quiet but firm, sent a faint current of dread through him. The following night, the wind carried a harsher bite. A thin layer of frost clung to the railings outside the hospital, and Lucas had barely stepped out when he spotted her, already seated, already waiting, as if the cold didn't dare touch her resolve. The streetlight above her flickered, casting uneven shadows across the sidewalk, making her appear both fragile and unyielding at once. Lucas crossed the street with a purposeful stride. He wasn't sure when concern had turned into something heavier, something that followed him through hallways and patient rounds, but he felt it every time he saw her silhouette through the glass. "Did you sleep at all?" he asked softly as he approached. She rubbed her gloved fingers together, creating a faint friction of warmth. "A little," she said. "Enough to stand, enough to wait." A passing car sent ripples through the puddles at their feet. She watched the headlights fade before pulling the same small notebook from her pocket. Tonight, her grip was tighter, knuckles paling beneath the strain. Lucas nodded at it. "Does he still write in it? Even now?" Her throat worked before she spoke. "He tries," she said. "Some days it's just scribbles, other days a sentence, sometimes a drawing. He always places it on the tray beside his bed before falling asleep." Lucas could picture it vividly. A kid clinging to fragments of expression, fighting whatever held him captive behind those walls. "What happened to him?" Lucas asked gently. This time she didn't flinch. Instead, she set the umbrella carefully beside her and lowered her gaze to her lap. "It wasn't an accident," she whispered. "People assume it was. A crash, a fall, something sudden." Her voice thinned. But it wasn't sudden at all. Lucas felt the cold settle deeper into his chest. She continued, her eyes fixed on a crack in the pavement. "My son, he carries a deep trauma, and he hid it from me." Her fingers tightened around the notebook. "A secret from the past, something he kept to protect me." Lucas inhaled slowly. He sensed the heaviness in her words, not melodramatic, not exaggerated, but lived, earned. "Is that why you don't go inside?" he asked. "Because of the secret?" She shook her head, eyes glistening with the shine of unshed tears. "I'm afraid," she confessed. "Afraid of reading what he finally wrote, afraid of what he endured, afraid that when I know the truth, I'll break." The words struck Lucas with unexpected force. Before he could respond, the hospital doors slid open. A nurse stepped out, scanning the sidewalk with urgent eyes before calling her name. The woman froze. Lucas felt the air shift around them. Something had changed. The nurse's voice carried through the cold air, sharp enough to slice through the woman's breath. She rose from the bench slowly, as if each movement risked shattering the fragile balance she had been holding together night after night. The notebook remained clutched against her chest. Lucas stepped beside her without needing an invitation. "Ma'am," the nurse said, rain dampening the ends of her scrubs, "the doctor asked me to bring you in." The woman stiffened. Her eyes darted toward the glowing entrance, then back to the nurse's face, searching for something, danger, relief, the truth she wasn't sure she wanted. Is he worse?" she whispered. The nurse shook her head. "No, but the doctor needs to talk to you. It's important. Important." The word echoed with a heaviness that made her grip the bench for balance. Lucas noticed the slight tremor in her legs and touched her arm gently. "Let me walk with you," he said. She hesitated, but only for a heartbeat before nodding. Together they followed the nurse through the sliding doors, where warm air met the cold night with a quiet hiss. The familiar scent of antiseptic filled the hallway, mingled with hushed conversations and distant monitor beeps. The woman's steps grew slower with each stride. Halfway to the elevators, she stopped. "I can't," she breathed, pressing the notebook against her ribs as if shielding her heart. "I'm not ready to know what he wrote, what he lived through, what I failed to see." Lucas faced her, lowering his voice. "Whatever it is, you're not facing it alone now." She closed her eyes at the softness in his tone. The pain on her face wasn't loud. It was quiet, dignified, the kind that came from years of carrying too much without dropping anything. The elevator doors slid open with a dull chime. The nurse waited inside, offering a small, encouraging smile. The woman stepped forward, but before entering, her gaze lifted toward the 8th floor, as though she could already feel her son's presence from below. As the doors closed, Lucas noticed the way her free hand hovered slightly in the air, reaching for something unseen. When they reached the ICU wing, the hallway was dimmer, quieter, the air colder. The nurse led them to a small consultation room where another physician waited. A man in his early 60s, silver hair, gentle eyes. He rose when they entered. "Mrs. Hale," he said softly, "thank you for coming. We need to discuss your son's condition." Her breath caught. Lucas stayed at her side, the tension in the room tightening around them like a drawn thread. "What happened?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Please, just tell me." Dr. Whitman folded his hands, choosing his words with care. "It's about his heart," he he said, and something he finally said tonight. The woman's fingers slipped on the notebook. Lucas felt the shift, subtle, devastating, like the air just before a storm breaks. For a moment, no one spoke. The room felt suspended, the fluorescent lights humming faintly above them. Mrs. Hale's knuckles whitened around the notebook as she struggled to steady her breath. Lucas stayed close, sensing that she was standing on the edge of something she'd avoided for far too long. Dr. Whitman pulled a chair out for her. "Please, sit," he said gently. She obeyed, lowering herself slowly, as if her body feared collapsing under the weight of whatever was coming. Lucas took the seat beside her, not entirely sure why the doctor allowed it, but grateful nonetheless. "What did my son say?" she asked, her voice brittle. Dr. Whitman exhaled, folding his hands. "He asked for you," he said. "Directly, by name. It's the first time he's spoken more than a few words in weeks." Her lips parted slightly, a tight breath slipping through. He asked for me?" The doctor nodded. "And he said something else. Something we believe is tied to the emotional trauma he's been carrying." He leaned forward. "He said he didn't want to hurt you anymore." Her eyes filled instantly, but she blinked the tears back, the restraint almost painful to witness. "I don't understand," she whispered. "How could he possibly think that?" Lucas felt his chest tighten. "Mrs. Hale, sometimes children carry guilt that doesn't belong to them." She looked down at the notebook trembling in her lap. "He wrote something in here," she murmured. "Something he didn't want me to see." Dr. Whitman exchanged a delicate glance with Lucas. "We haven't read it. That's for the two of you. But your son asked us to let you know he's ready to tell the truth." The word truth landed like a thud in the quiet room. Mrs. Hale pressed a hand over her heart. "I waited outside every night," she said softly. "I thought the distance would protect him. I thought my presence might overwhelm him. I didn't want him to feel pressured to explain something painful. Sometimes," Lucas said gently, "love makes people build walls they think are safe." She swallowed hard. "Can I see him?" "Yes," Dr. Whitman said. "But before you go in, there's something else." Her breath stilled. "We received the results of his cardiac scan," he continued. "Your son's condition isn't only emotional. The trauma triggered a stress response, but beneath that there is a congenital issue, one he may have been feeling for a long time without telling anyone." Mrs. Hale's expression collapsed into fear. "Is his life in danger?" Dr. Whitman hesitated, choosing each word like a surgeon with a fragile instrument. "At this stage we can manage it, but his heart is strained. Whatever he's been carrying, it's been crushing him from the inside." A silence followed, deep, cold, heavy. Finally, she clutched the notebook closer, her voice breaking into a whisper. "Then I need to hear what he's been carrying." The decision hovered in the air, trembling with dread and hope at once. The ICU hallway felt colder than the rest of the hospital, as if quiet itself had weight. Each step Mrs. Hale took was deliberate, her hand brushing the walls gently, as though she needed to feel something solid beneath her fingertips. Lucas walked beside her, not touching her, but close enough that she sensed the steady presence he offered. At the doorway of room 814, she paused. Her breath fogged slightly in the chilled air. The small window revealed dim lights, a heart monitor's soft glow, and the outline of a boy lying very still. Too still. Lucas watched her gather strength in silence, the way her shoulders lifted with a trembling inhale. "You can go in," he whispered. She pushed the door open. The faint beeping of the monitor greeted her, slow but steady. Her son Evan lay curled slightly on his side, his dark hair damp against the pillow, a thin hospital blanket tucked carefully around him. His chest rose and fell in small, uneven breaths. There was a fragility to him that made her heart constrict. "Evan," she murmured. His eyelids fluttered, then lifted. When he saw her standing there, something in his expression broke open. Relief, fear, and longing all at once. "Mum?" His voice was hoarse, barely louder than a breath. She approached the bed slowly. "I'm here," she whispered. "I've been here every night." A shadow crossed his face. "I know," he said. "I saw you from the window. I didn't want you to wait in the cold." Her throat tightened. "Then why didn't you ask for me sooner?" Evan looked away, staring at the pattern of the blanket. His fingers curled into the fabric, gripping it the way a child clings to something safe. Yet this time, the gesture felt more like someone holding on to the last piece of a secret. "I didn't want you to know," he said. "I didn't want you to read what I wrote." She sat beside him, setting the notebook carefully on the bedside table. "You don't have to hide from me." He shook his head weakly. "You'll hate yourself," he whispered. The words struck her harder than she expected. She reached out, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Evan, whatever happened, it's not your fault." He swallowed, his breath trembling. "It is. I kept it quiet. I should have told you before everything got worse." Lucas stood discreetly near the door, giving them space but listening closely enough to understand the weight of what Evan was struggling to say. "What did you keep quiet?" Mrs. Hale asked, her voice steady though her hands trembled. Evan stared at the ceiling, eyes glossy with fear. "It wasn't the chest pains that scared me," he whispered. "It was who caused them." She froze. "Mom, something happened last year. Something I didn't know how to tell you. And now, my heart can't take it anymore." He turned his head slowly, tears slipping sideways across his temple. "It was him," he said. "The man you trusted." The room went still, heavy, breathless, as if the truth had finally stepped out of the shadows. For several seconds, the world inside room 814 held its breath. The faint beeping of the monitor became the only sound, steady but somehow quieter, as if even the machine understood the weight of Evan's confession. Mrs. Hale's hand stopped mid-air, the softness in her expression shifting into something darker. Fear, confusion, disbelief. "Evan..." Her voice barely formed his name. "What do you mean, the man I trusted?" Evan closed his eyes, the tension around them tightening as though he were bracing for impact. "I didn't want to tell you," he whispered. "I was afraid it would destroy you." She leaned closer, her breath trembling. "Tell me," she pleaded. "Please, whatever it is, I need to know." He hesitated, chest rising unevenly. Then the words spilled out, slow, fragile. "Mom." It was Mark. The name hit her like a slap she never saw coming. Her ex-partner. The man she had dated for a brief period after losing her husband. Charming, polite, always patient. Evan had seemed distant around him, but she assumed it was just grief, adjustment, the fear of welcoming someone new. Her stomach twisted violently. "What did he do to you?" she asked, though the question tasted like poison. A tear slid down Evan's face. "He used to wait for you to leave for your night shifts. And he'd push me. Hard." He swallowed, the memory tightening every muscle in his face. "Sometimes into the wall, sometimes onto the floor. He said I was weak, that you needed someone stronger, someone who wouldn't let me grow up useless." Mrs. Hale's breath broke. Her hand clamped over her mouth, muffling a sob she couldn't contain. "He told me not to tell you," Evan continued, voice shaking now. "He said you'd blame me, that you'd think I ruined everything. And when the chest pain started, I thought it was my fault for not being tough enough." She reached for him, grasping his hand with both of hers. "Evan, listen to me," she whispered, fighting to stay composed. Nothing he said was true. You did nothing wrong. You hear me? Nothing." He looked at her, eyes wide, wet, terrified of her reaction. "I didn't want to break your heart," he murmured. You finally smiled again with him. A single tear slipped down her cheek. "I wasn't smiling. I was pretending. And because I was pretending, I didn't see what he was doing to you." Lucas, still standing quietly near the door, felt his jaw tighten. A familiar anger rose inside him, an instinctive response to cruelty, the kind that left invisible scars. He took a step closer, his voice steady. "Evan," he said softly, "what you went through, it wasn't weakness, it was trauma, and your body has been carrying the burden of silence." Evan blinked at him, as though relief and guilt collided at once. Mrs. Hale squeezed her son's hand tighter. "I swear to you," she whispered, "I will protect you now. I won't fail you again." Just then, Evan's monitor let out a sharp, irregular beep. His body tensed. Lucas rushed forward. The moment of truth had opened a door, and Evan's heart was struggling to keep up with it. The sharp alarm from the heart monitor cut through the room like a blade. Evan's breath quickened, his chest tightening as panic rippled across his face. Mrs. Hale instinctively reached for him, but Lucas gently moved her aside just enough to free space around the bed. "It's okay, Evan," Lucas said firmly, his voice calm despite the urgency rising beneath it. "Stay with me. Breathe slowly. In through your nose. Good. Keep going." But Evan's breaths grew shorter, more erratic. Mrs. Hale pressed a trembling hand against her own chest, as if trying to ease the pain she felt echoing inside her. "What's happening? Lucas, what's happening?" Lucas checked the monitor, then Evan's pulse, his brow tightening. His heart is reacting to the stress, the emotional strain. It pushed him past his limit. Another alarm blared, louder this time. The door swung open as two ICU nurses entered, already pulling gloves on. "What do you need, doctor?" "Epworth protocol," Lucas ordered. "Get me a dose of metoprolol. IV, slow push." Evan's eyes widened in fear. Mom." She leaned over him, brushing his hair gently. "I'm here," she whispered, fighting the tremor in her voice. "I'm right here, sweetheart. You're safe." Lucas positioned himself at the bedside, just as the nurse handed him the syringe. "Evan, this will help your heart slow down," he said. "You're not alone, I promise." As Lucas administered the medication, Evan's breathing hitched, then shuddered. His eyes fluttered weakly. "Stay with me," Mrs. Hale whispered. "Please, stay with me." Lucas watched the monitor intensely. The erratic spikes began to soften, still too fast but stabilizing. He let out a quiet breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. When the rhythm finally settled into a safer pattern, Evan slumped slightly against the pillow, exhausted. Tears escaped the corners of Mrs. Hale's eyes as she cupped his cheek with both hands. "You're okay," she murmured. "You're okay, baby." Evan swallowed hard, his voice barely audible. "I'm sorry." Lucas shook his head immediately. No apologies. Your body reacted to pain it carried for too long. This wasn't your fault." Mrs. Hale leaned closer. "You didn't break me," she whispered. "But silence almost broke you. We're done with silence. You hear me? From now on, everything you feel, you share with me." Evan nodded weakly. Then Lucas's pager buzzed, vibrating sharply against his hip. He glanced at it, a message from security. "Officer requesting your presence." "Matter involving Mrs. Hale." Lucas felt his stomach drop. He turned toward her slowly. "Mrs. Hale, the hospital security needs to speak with you," he said carefully. Her face paled. "Why?" she whispered. Lucas hesitated before answering. "They found someone outside, someone asking about Evan." The room froze. Evan's fingers dug into the blanket. A single name hung between them, even before anyone spoke it. Mark. The hallway outside the ICU felt tense, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly, as Lucas escorted Mrs. Hale toward the security office. Her steps were uneven, each one pulled between fear and the echo of her son's fragile heartbeat still ringing in her ears. When they reached the small room near the lobby, a uniformed officer stood waiting. The moment he saw her, he softened his posture. "Ma'am," he said gently, "we detained a man outside the west entrance. He was pacing, asking for updates about a patient named Evan Hale. He refused to leave when asked." Mrs. Hale's throat tightened. "Where is he now?" "In holding," the officer replied. "He claimed he was family, but based on your expression, I'm guessing he's not." Lucas stepped slightly in front of her, protective without seeming forceful. "She doesn't have to see him," he said firmly. "Not tonight." But Mrs. Hale shook her head. A steadiness formed in her gaze, not anger but something deeper, forged from the truth Evan had finally spoken. "No," she said. "I need to." The officer led them to a small viewing room with a glass panel. On the other side sat Mark, shoulders tense, expression twisting between irritation and false concern. He looked up as soon as he noticed her silhouette. "So you are here," he said, leaning forward. "I thought they were lying." Mrs. Hale didn't step closer. She held the line between them like a barrier carved from everything she now knew. "You hurt my son," she said, voice low, steady, "and you will never be near him again." Mark scoffed. "He's exaggerating. Kids do that. He always—" "Stop." The single word silenced the room. Her eyes did not waver. "He told me what you did. The pushing. The threats, the words you planted in his head. Her fingers curled at her sides. You broke his trust. You don't get access to him anymore. Mark opened his mouth again, but the officer intervened. Sir, you're being trespassed from the property. If you return, you will be arrested. Mark glared at Lucas, then at her, but said nothing. The officer led him away, his footsteps fading down the hall. Mrs. Hale exhaled, a trembling release, part grief, part relief, part rebirth. Lucas touched her arm gently. You did the right thing. Evan needed this. She nodded, eyes misting. He needs more than protection, she murmured. He needs healing, and I'm going to give him that. They returned to Evan's room quietly. He was awake, waiting, fear soft around his eyes until he saw her expression. It's done, she whispered, sitting beside him. He won't come back. Evan's breath loosened. A tear rolled sideways across his cheek. She opened the small notebook, but before reading a word, she placed her hand over his. Whatever is in here, I'll carry it with you, she said. Not instead of you. With you. Evan nodded, and for the first time the tension in his chest seemed to melt. Lucas stepped back, watching mother and son lean toward each other, fractured pieces gently finding their place again. Outside the window, the rain finally stopped. The night, once heavy with dread, shifted into something quieter, almost hopeful. A second chance, born not from miracles, but from truth, courage, and the smallest act of kindness, choosing to stay. Weeks later, Evan walked slowly through the community center garden, his steps steadier, his breaths deeper. His mother stayed beside him, the small notebook now tucked safely in her bag, not a weight, but a reminder of everything they had survived together. Lucas watched from a distance, a quiet smile forming as Evan lifted his face toward the pale spring sun. Healing hadn't come quickly, but it had come honestly, through truth, forgiveness, and the simple courage of choosing to stay. The hospital bench where Mrs. Hale once waited alone now stood empty, dry under clear skies, a silent symbol of the night their lives finally turned toward hope. Mother and son moved forward, not erasing the past, but carrying it with dignity. A second chance, rebuilt gently, piece by piece. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this heart-touching story. Tell us in the comments which moment touched you the most. Subscribe and turn on the bell to receive more stories that inspire and transform. Leave a like if you believe in the invisible strength of kindness, dignity, and family. And thank you for being part of this community that believes in stories with soul.